Simple Car Guy here, and today I will show you how to change the spark plugs on your BMW i3. This BMW i3 has the W20 motorcycle engine as the range extender, and just like any engine, it eventually needs the spark plugs to be changed as part of regular maintenance. I found some information stating that these should be replaced every 3 oil changes, so about every 3 years or every 30,000 miles, but I'm not sure how official this information is. Either way, mine have never been replaced, and this car is approaching 100,000 miles, so it's time. I also looked up the maintenance schedule for the C650 scooter, which has this engine, and it recommends changing the plugs every 24,000 miles. So if we divide 24,000 miles by, let's say, 45 miles an hour average speed, that would give us about 530 hours of operation. This engine has over 1,200 hours of operation, according to my BMW scanner, as well as almost 50,000 miles driven with the range extender running. I would definitely recommend checking your stats to see how much use your range extender actually got and if it's time to change the spark plugs. The scanner I used is linked in the description, and you can check out a review of this scanner by clicking on this card right here. Let's quickly discuss what you will actually need to change the spark plugs on this BMW i3 range extender. Obviously, you're going to need spark plugs. This is the part number that you will need for this car. I recommend getting BMW ones. They're pretty cheap and there's only 2 of them. So yeah, definitely worth the price. This is also the part numbers if you want to look those up. Obviously, I will have them linked in the description. One important thing is that these spark plugs are unlike any other BMW spark plug I've ever used. So these are typical on your BMW N54, N55, and 20, and 63 engines, and basically all the other BMW engines. And this is using a 12.14 millimeter socket, which obviously this isn't a 12-point spark plug, but the same specialty BMW socket will work on this. So that's what I'm going to be using. If you have other tools, you can use that as well. But these are thin-walled, so they work really, really well, and nothing's going to get stuck. And of course, they hold the spark plug in place as well. On top of that, you will probably need a couple of wrenches and sockets and extensions, so typical car maintenance stuff. And since it's a BMW, you will probably need some e-Torx and Torx sockets as well to get some of the screws and bolts out. So let's get started. Before touching anything electronic, BMW recommends disconnecting the high voltage system and disconnecting the negative terminal on your 12-volt battery. Only then we can start working in the back here. Of course, you want to make sure that the car is actually in the sleep mode before you start disconnecting the high voltage battery and the 12-volt battery, and make sure that it does say that the high voltage system is disconnected. In the back here, we will need a T25 Torx socket, and then we can remove all of these bolts that will then allow us to remove this back cover. With all of the bolts removed, we can now remove the cover, put it to the side. Now we get to see the actual range extender unit just right here. So this is the engine that powers your car when you're out of battery. Our goal here is to remove this intake manifold that's sitting under this cover, and then the spark plugs are going to be just under the intake manifold. Looks like we can just fold this over for now, get it out of our way, and now we see what the job actually involves. Our first step is to partially remove the intake plenum, so basically this part right here. I'm going to do that by disconnecting this intake pipe, and then there's a few bolts in the back here and a couple of here, so we can move this expansion tank to the side, and then we'll be able to lift up the intake manifold completely. Well, of course, maybe these two as well. So a few things to do, but not too crazy. These 2 bolts are 10 millimeter. There is another one underneath, so it's going to be the same 10 mil. Right, so the idea of removing this is that we don't have to disconnect all of these vacuum lines and everything else. This is much easier to remove. Looks like the expansion tank is just held in by a few of these clips. Very interesting system. I've never worked on a car like this. Next, let's remove this electrical connection and this, what I think is a vacuum line. So you gotta pull this red thing out and then slide it out, put it to the side. Then this is just a standard electrical plug. Comes out easily just like that. Let's remove these 6 bolts and then see what else is left. You will need a T30 e-torque socket, just like this. Looks like these are not meant to be removed completely, so that's good. They should stay in place. You definitely don't want anything to drop down here. It'll be impossible to get. All right, it's definitely loose now. So let's try to take it out. Looks like we can fully remove the throttle body as well. That's not really being held in by anything. So I'm just gonna put it to the side here. There's space. We have to unclip this heat shield as well. Kind of a unpleasant design here. I'm just gonna cut it on the side here and slide it out. I wouldn't recommend doing that on a customer's car, but it's not gonna make any difference here. So I don't care. Okay, there's a couple more connectors here, so we can remove those. Okay, that's gone. I just stripped this part off. I don't really care. It's being held in here as well. The same kind of thing. You can take off this bracket to do that. But all right, so there's 2 more connections here underneath, literally under right there. So that's going to be a little bit more difficult to remove because it's blind. All right, finally that last part is removed. And that was a pain in the ass a little bit. So this is the vacuum hose that comes attached right here. So this is normally installed like this, and then right underneath, that's where the hose is installed. So I was able to leverage it a little bit to get to it. But now we have full access to the ignition coils just right here and the spark plugs underneath the ignition coils. But anyway, let's get these replaced. First step is to disconnect the ignition coils. Gotta be very careful because this plastic is super brittle and it will most likely break if you're not careful. I have broken many of these. Okay, that one came out. Easy enough. Okay, pull that up out of the way a little bit and do the same thing here. Want to use your flathead very carefully just to give you a little bit of leverage. There it is. Okay. Now we gotta remove these ignition coils. There is a special tool that you're supposed to use, which I didn't buy. You want to twist them a little bit. That will probably loosen them up and then pull. This might be a little barbaric, but I don't think so. I'm just going to pull them up like that. A little bit of leverage and they eventually come out. Want to make sure nothing is broken here. So I'm going to make sure these are in good condition, not rusted or anything like that. These look perfect. Grab the other one. This one looks perfect as well. Obviously, I would replace them if they were in bad condition, but they look fine. And now we finally have access to the spark plugs. All right, so just to give you a little bit of a closer view, here are the spark plugs, and obviously a very easy access once you are there. Of course, you have to remove the entire intake manifold to do so, but yeah, that's just how it works, I guess. So yeah, a little bit of a closer view if you wanted to see everything. It looks kind of complicated, but honestly, it's not that bad. Let's get these removed. So I'm gonna grab my fancy 12.14 millimeter socket, $5 on Amazon, and go in to get these removed. Make sure we have a good grip on those. And there you go. Perfect. Go to the second one. Perfect. All right, the rest we can do by hand. Well, if there was any doubt in my mind if I had to change these, this just proves that I was 100% correct. Look at this. The electrode in there is basically non-existent now. It's so tiny, it's been worn out a lot. Of course, this top part, whatever it's called, that's pretty used up as well. Yeah, these are not in great condition. They definitely look like they have been used since the car was new, and it sure does look like it as well. BMW NGK looks like the original ones. Maybe they were replaced once, but I highly doubt it. These look really, really bad in my eyes, so I am very happy that I'm going to be replacing these. I will most likely even get some better fuel economy, or, well, faster charging, whatever you want to call it on this car. I hope you can make it out on camera, but that's a pretty clear difference right there. Just look how thick this part is, this metal part at the top, compared to the used one. That's a much bigger gap. So yeah, this is gonna help out this engine a lot. Last very important step is that we have to torque these spark plugs to spec. The spec for these is 12 Newton meters or 8.8 pound-feet of torque, and of course I'm going to be using my torque wrench. Also, when you start, make sure you go by hand. Do not use a drill, do not use a wrench or anything like that. Just go by hand. So simply put it in and then thread it by hand, making sure it goes in nice and smooth, and just go as long as you can by hand. Same thing with the second one. Okay, tight by hand. Now we can use our torque wrench. And there it is. First click, don't torque any further. And there it is. Perfect. They are now torqued to spec. Don't touch them. Now it's time to reassemble everything. You want to make sure it clicks in. When you push it in, you will feel a click almost. So don't just leave it like that. You have to push it in. And there it is. Use your entire body to make sure it's in. Great. Now we can put the electrical connections in. Gotta be careful with some of this stuff. It's been here for, what, 7 years untouched. Gotta make sure we reconnect this hose right here at the bottom. Ah, there it is. So make sure it clicks. I'm gonna torque these to 10 Newton meters or like 7.3 something pound-feet of torque. Okay, done. Same 10 Newton meters here. Now we can reconnect this air line all the way, clip it in, perfect. And the electrical plug, that's in. Put this back in its place. Do the same thing on this side. We can put the expansion tank back in its place and click it in. There you go. And the last thing is the throttle body. So make sure everything is good here. I'll do the top ones first so I can move this intake pipe away without this kind of falling apart, because it's kind of holding it in place at the moment. These 3 bolts should be tightened to about 6 Newton meters, but honestly I don't think my torque wrench is very accurate at 6 Newton meters because it's really low. So I'm just gonna do hand tight, not enough to strip the plastic or anything, but to where it feels pretty tight under your hand. Well, I'll do the same for all 3. Put this back on. Not really sure how far it's supposed to go in. I guess that far. Once it clips in, feels about right. I will do this one hand tight as well. That's plenty. Don't be a dummy like me and forget this harness plug right here that goes into your MEF sensor, or at least I think it's a MEF sensor. I'm gonna put it underneath here and plug it in. Definitely important, or this thing will not run well at all. Now we can just gonna put this insulation thing right here. There it is. Let's put this cover back. And we are done. Of course, it's probably a good idea to reconnect the negative on the battery. And enable high voltage again. Otherwise, you're not gonna go very far. All right, car turns on. We are good to go. Well, guys, I hope this video has helped you change the spark plugs on your BMW i3. And if it has, make sure to hit that like button. Of course, this isn't as easy as changing spark plugs on like a Mini Cooper with the N16 engine, or the BMW Z4 with the N20 engine, or the BMW 335 with the N55 engine. This is a little bit more complicated as we have to get to these to replace them. Of course, once we're there, it's pretty easy. But yeah, I hope those steps have helped you out. And of course, if you'd like to see more videos on this car, like how to change the oil in this engine, why not click on this video? And of course, you want to see the entire playlist of this car from the beginning, why not click on this video? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.